Ush, welcome again to another edition of the Sanuces Skills and Drills interview. Today we will be talking to one of the original Grandmasters, the original Sanuces crew, before it was called Sanuces, Grandmaster Harold Oglesby, the Big O. We'll talk about the legendary Hodgson, Lumumba, Little John, Ken Brown, Professor V, and Grandmaster Veronica. All right, everybody, thank you again for joining us for another interview with Sanuces Skills and Drill. This interview, as usual, is dedicated always to the upliftment of the name of Dr. Moses Powell and Sanuces Jiu-Jitsu and the honoring of his teacher, Grand Professor V. And we always talk about Dr. Moses Powell and the things that he's done and things of that nature. But today, we're going to start something different. Well, we're going to talk about Dr. Moses Powell, but we're also going to talk about Grand Professor V and V-Jitsu, because that's the beginning of all of this that we have been doing. And today we have a very special guest. There are a lot of masters that a lot of us don't know about because they weren't on TV, they weren't in the magazines, but they were there in the beginning, helping Dr. Moses Powell formulate Sanuces, and they opened the doors for all of us that are around today. So today we're speaking to one of the original Sanuces masters from the 60s. He was with Dr. Moses Powell before the name Sanuces was even used. And today we have Grandmaster Harold Oglesby, better known as the Big O. We'll talk about his class with Doc, his meeting with Doc, his classes with Professor V, his classmates who were there in the beginning, as I call them, the original Sanuces crew. So, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you, considering.
Very good.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We're going to try to do this real smooth and sweet so you can get some information from this great master. He's one of my mentors. I've known him for years. I met him years ago when Doc was here, and he's like a mentor for me for V-Jitsu and Sanuces. He always is a gentleman. He reminds me so much of Doc, and if you're looking at him, you probably say, wow, that look like Doc. So just tell us how did you meet Dr. Moses Powell? How did you first become a student? Tell us some things.
I originally, I came to Doc in early January or so of 1966. I had really never heard of him. I heard of him when I was studying karate on Governor's Island in New York on a man by the name of Isaac Henry. Isaac was in the Army, he was being transferred, base was being turned over to the Navy. But at that time, we were very close with Nisei Goju Karate, which was run by the late Grandmaster Frank Ruiz. Frank Ruiz, a student, was well known. His name was Louis Delgado. Louis was a brown belt under Doc. And Louis told me, he said, you guys ought to think about studying jiu-jitsu under a man by the name of Moses Powell. First time I ever heard the name. And that started the ball rolling. Once our school, the karate school, closed, we found out Doc's school was across the street from the late Master Hudson's father's church. It was right across the street. Hudson called me and told me I found Moses Powell. And I went down there the day after or whatever and met him when he was teaching a class. And what I saw was this massive man that moved on the mat like one of the most agile cats I had ever seen. But you would never know it by his size.
Yes, sir.
And also, I had a habit of sitting sometime with one hand over the other. And at that time, I used to work very intensively on my knuckles.
Yes, sir.
And they kind of showed. So at the class, Doc came over towards me, and he literally, Seyfullah knows the story, he literally, as I was sitting in one of the chairs, he literally took his hand, pulled me by my shirt collar, said, come with me. He didn't say anything, come with me. He took me into his office. Back in those days, it was not uncommon for somebody, an instructor, to send people into other dojos to steal their techniques.
Oh, got you.
This was a very common thing. And he thought I was there from one school to do that. So after we talked, he said, would you like to study under me? I said, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Because I had always wanted to learn how to throw and choke. I felt that was an ultimate art, sweep.
Yes, sir.
He had checked me out through, the people that knew me. He knew of Isaac Henry, my instructor, who was another well-known karate instructor.
Yes, sir.
And he checked me out, and I got to go,
Yes, sir.
back down to the dojo. That was my first physical initial meeting
Yes, sir.
with Doc.
Yes, sir. So, okay, well, all right, so this is 1966, so this is kind of rough time in New York. Walking the streets was, you found out how tough it was back then. So tell me how some of the classes were, some of the experiences that took place in the dojo under Doc. Now, it wasn't called Sanuces at that time, correct?
That is correct. It was the Moses Powell School of Self-Defense, or something like that.
Yes, sir.
There was no Sanuces ever mentioned.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The concept was streetology.
Lush.
That was it. We taught what was, or I should say, Doc taught what was going to be utilized in the street.
Yes, sir.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yes, sir. So what are some of the things that he taught for the street?
For the street?
Yes, sir.
First of all, he had a saying, I'm teaching you how not to fight. And you would actually have to stop to think about that and actually break it down and figure out what he was saying.
Yes, sir.
I'm teaching you how not to fight, which meant you only fought when it became necessary.
Yes, sir.
There was no sportsmanship taught. As a matter of fact, like Little John and Lumumba, and later when I met Robert, they had to pretty much get permission to fight in tournaments.
Yes, sir.
Because when you went down to Sunnyside Garden to register to fight in a tournament, we had no diplomas, we had no patches, all we wore were belts, and we were jiu-jitsu. And back in that era, it was karate and kung fu that were out. There was no jiu-jitsu, until they actually saw what our people could do. But
Yes, sir.
a lot of, could not even get recognized for fighting tournaments.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So everything was taught geared towards street,
Yes, sir.
how to be aware and what to do. As a matter of fact, today, some of the techniques that Doc taught, he kind of eliminated, or we watered it down, because the way the laws are today, you would be brought up on charges of homicide.
Wow.
We had something known as the jiu-jitsu death throw. There's no way in the world you were going to get out of this throw. And
So tell me about this jiu-jitsu death throw. Did you land on your head? Help us out.
you hit it pretty much on the nail on the head. It was once you got behind your opponent and you took him by the neck. And to make it short story sweet, you would bring him over, drop to one knee or both knees, and you brought him down on the vertebrae of the neck.
Woo!
Now you can take all the side folds, back folds you want, but you were brought down on the back of your neck on
Yes,
the
sir.
vertebrae.
Yes, sir.
And even when we had to learn to fall, we had to do it very slowly. But that was eliminated. Another concept that Doc had to change over the years, we've all seen what Doc can do when he's attacked,
Yes, sir.
when one was attacking. He did multiple attacks.
Yes, sir.
He would have John, he would have Hodgson, he would have Noel, me. We would do multiple attacks attacking him.
Right.
Now the danger in that was one or two people, maybe three people attacking him. He was fine. When you start going past that third one,
Right.
he was keyed up.
Yes, sir.
He was keyed up. That's the only way I can put it.
Yes, sir.
He was keyed up. And many a time, we knew John was going to go first.
Right.
And many a times, we would have to, rocks, paper, scissors, see how we were going to run this.
Yes, sir.
Because we know you got 3 or 4. If you were that man and the cycle was still going, God only knows where you were going to wind up on that mat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Or if you were going to wind up on the mat at all.
So these attacks on Moses Powell were not prearranged. Like you come with a punch, you guys were attacking him like if it happened in the street.
It was no way you could prearrange that.
Wow.
When we attacked him, and like I said, at least over the year after the years, he had changed that to a degree. Because, as I said, 3rd and 4th man
Was in trouble.
You were in dire trouble. Matter of fact, one of them got knocked out.
Wow.
One got knocked out.
Wow.
But you had to realize, as I said, this was about streetology. It was not uncommon for us to leave the dojo with your gis ripped or blood stains on your gi.
Yes, sir.
Dislocated or sprained wrists, joints. This was the reality of it all.
Yes, sir. Yes,
This
sir.
was the reality of it all. And the good thing about it was we realized he was pulling his punches.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was the frightening thing. He pulled his punches.
Yes, sir.
He pulled his kicks.
Yes, sir.
And we all became so close that sometimes when there was a small class, he would dismiss them early. And we went visiting. We went visiting other dojos. We went to...
You would go to other dojos?
Oh yeah, we went, he was friend. The late great master of the Way of the Winds,
Yes,
Ronald
sir.
Duncan.
Yes, sir.
We would go to his dojo. We went, and once when he found out that his old karate instructor was teaching, he opened up a dojo, and across the street from Peter Irvin. I think his last name was Mitchell. He took us to meet him.
Okay.
He took us to meet him. Because Moses had studied, he had studied Goshen-Do karate.
Yes, sir.
So
Wow.
it was really an honor when he had the nerve, or should I say, when he had the foresight to take us to meet his old masters or his old instructors
Yes, sir.
and introduce, because we were brown belts. John was the only black belt. I don't know if Lumumba was brown or black then, but John was the only black belt. And he took us and he would introduce us, and from that point on, after a workout in the dojo, we spent 6 to 7 days in the dojo. Every man had a key to the dojo on Atlantic Avenue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They all had a key. And I worked out by myself there on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Sundays was my day on the dojo. And I worked on the bag, kicks, makiwara, stretching, and I treated myself after that. I would treat myself to a movie and dinner.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well,
Yes, sir.
and that was it. I led a very quiet life.
Yeah, some of the other masters that I've talked to said you were like the real quiet one, but the real dangerous one. In fact, when I talked to Grandmaster Robert Clausen, Sugar, he said that you had the ability to do a full straddle split, and your kicks, what people see as a great kicker today, like Van Damme and those guys, he said you were doing that before Van Damme was born. He said you could throw a side thrust kick up to the ceiling.
I don't know.
Your kicks.
I don't know how I was able to do that. I could do that literally without warming up.
Yeah, that's what he told me. Yes, sir.
I never needed a warm up.
That's what he told me. Yes, sir. Yes,
I could do full splits, front and side, and I just don't know how I did, but I always kept my hips limber. I always kept my legs limber.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if that had anything to do with the injury that I had suffered that I'm healing from now. I mean, now pretty much walking, you know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I was able to do that. I didn't even have to warm up, you know. So.
Wow. So, well, let me ask you this. You had those powerful kicks, and Sugar is one of the most famous students from that class. And he spoke about your kicks as though they were superior to everybody else. Let me ask you this. You're learning street combat from Moses Powell, and you're in the classroom with Lumumba, Ken Brown, Hodgson, Sugar, Noel Arrington, Lil John Davis. How did you all, I mean, what about tournaments? I know Lil John was famous in the tournaments, Lumumba was famous in the tournaments, Sugar was famous in the tournament. Tell me how you guys got away from the manslaughter techniques to the tournament techniques.
Oh, first of all, if you wanted to fight in tournament, you had to speak to Doc first.
Yes, sir.
And he had more of an insight on our personalities. Everybody was not meant to fight in tournaments because he knew. Like I said, back in those days in tournaments, you had to be careful because there were just people out there that were trying to hurt you.
Yes, sir.
And Doc realized once he trained us to defend ourselves. I mean, there have been some tournaments, and I'm sure you've seen some of them, where there was almost a riot.
Yes, sir.
We had battles out there in the stands.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Battles in the rings.
Yes, sir.
Just for a trophy. And like Doc used to tell us, said, you want to fight for a trophy. If you needed $50 to feed your family, you couldn't get $50 for that trophy at a pawn shop.
Wow. Wow.
Now, as you can see, I'm a pretty big person. Now, when you went to a tournament, that was an all-day affair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wanted to eat some of that time. Listen, I'm not spending all day in no tournament. In 3 rings, you got the morning, you got the semifinals and all that.
Right.
What we were there for, just like a lot of other tournaments, to make sure justice was carried out.
You know, I'm glad you said that. So, this is what I heard from another one of my Jiu-Jitsu masters who has been mentoring me. He told me, let's say that Lumumba or Lil John went to a tournament to fight. You all would be ringside or in the audience to make sure that he got justice, and if anything broke out, you all would be there to have his back.
That was true.
That was true. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That was the truth. We were there, you might walk around from ring to ring, or if one of the students was being unfairly treated.
Right.
And they were trying to throw points towards the other student.
Yes, sir.
We were there to make sure none of this happened,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if anything decided to break, well, so be it,
Yes, sir.
But tournaments back then was something else, man. You actually sometime may have gone there at your own risk.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like I said, Doc taught streetology. Streetology.
So who were the students out of that original crew that were given permission to go to the tournaments, and who were those who were not given permission, and why?
Well, there were certain ones, like I said, who had the interest. I mean, we had John had the interest, Lumumba, later on, and then later on Robert.
Right.
Most of, as a matter of fact, when Doc interviewed you, he would ask you, "What are you interested in learning?"
Yes, sir. Oh, wow. Okay.
Some wanted more of training in Aikido, some in Judo, some in Jiu-Jitsu, some in the Karate. So even though we were trained under Doc, depending on what your interests were, your insight was, that's what he worked with you, to develop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I personally didn't want to fight, and Doc, I remember he called me into the office one day for something. He said, "John will work with me on fighting techniques, or even sugar. He said, I don't want you thinking about going to the no titles because your personality. And I looked at him and that look, when I frowned, my personality. He said, yeah, because if somebody tries to hurt you, you're going to go off on them.
Yes.
And he says, as a matter of fact, if you ever challenge, this is Doc's talking to me, if you ever challenge me to fight, I would more than likely have to kill you. Those were his words. And I looked at him and said, you would kill? He said, yeah, because you don't realize what you possess.
Right, right.
You're too quiet. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
No one blow is going to put you down.
Right. You know, it's funny that you said that because the fact that he would say, if you would ever challenge me, again, another one of the mentors from the original crew that I talk to all the time told me that if Doc brought somebody into the dojo from another system and he worked with them and then he gave them promotion, that you all he gave you all the right to say, we disagree with that. And Doc would say, well, okay, well, if you disagree, then y'all have to fight. But I'll fight the winner. So you all actually could fight a person that he would promote? Give me a story on that, how that went.
It went about just like what you're saying. You know, if you felt that person, let's just say, was possibly not worthy of that particular rank, you could challenge him to get on the mat and let's see what your kumite skills were.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And we didn't fight for points or anything. These were blows.
Yes, sir.
These were kicks.
Yes, sir.
These were throws.
Yes, sir.
You know, like I said, many times you might have left there with a bloody lip, busted nose, gi rip. We would fight. Many a time Doc would pull, and he actually just pulled you off of somebody, or whatever. But this did a number of things. It built up built you up to where you could take blows,
yes, sir.
You could give blows, and this also taught us not to be so quick to fight in the street.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And yes, your life is dependent on it,
yes,
or you were defending someone else's honor, or making sure that they were taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Like
yes,
he
sir.
said, I'm teaching you how not to fight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I always will remember that, because a lot of times I would have to think, I said, what does he mean he's teaching us how not to fight? We're studying a martial art, and you figure you're being taught how to fight, but I'm teaching you how not
to fight. Wow.
And a lot of the things he said, you have to actually just think about. I'm teaching you how not to fight.
Yes, sir.
And it was something. And your next question would have to be like when Hodgson had challenged Doc to a fight or a battle or a kumite.
Yes, sir.
That was funny. So
tell us about, the whole time I was with Doc, I used to always hear about this guy named Hodgson. And how crazy he was, how good of a fighter he was, and that he had the audacity to actually challenge Doc. Now, Grandmaster Sugar told me a funny story about a guy who challenged Doc, and Doc looked at him. He wanted to really know if Doc could do what he thought he could do. So Doc said, I tell you what, see that knife over there? He said, go pick that knife up and put it in your hand, so that way I can justify what I'm about to do to you. And I was like, what? That's crazy. In other words, you don't want to deal with me, but I'm gonna give you a fighting chance. Go grab that knife. So here's Hodgson, street fighter, street gangster, a close friend of yours. How long have you known Hodgson?
I met Hodgson, I think, we met each other in the 9th grade.
Okay, so you know Hodgson. You knew his father. You mentioned his father.
I knew his father, his mother,
okay,
his brothers,
so
sister,
You and Hudson find Moses Powell. You start training in streetology, preparing for the streets. You guys weren't tournament fighters because you guys would have got disqualified in a minute in the tournament. So here you are in the dojo. Did you ever challenge Dr. Moses Powell?
No, remember I told you, Doc said, if you ever challenge me to a fight, I'm going to have to kill you.
Okay, so what made Hudson, just tell us the story, because
Hudson, you have to realize, Hudson was like some people who are short in stature and in height. To me, Hudson had a complex about his height.
Got you.
He really did. He had a complex about his height. So Hudson had no choice. He had to know how to fight.
Yes, sir.
He had to know how to defend himself.
Yes, sir.
And when we met, so when Hudson would come over to my house, which is walking distance, I was living home, and in the basement, we made our own little mat. My mother was father having construction done. We put plywood down on the floor, and we actually threw old clothes down to soften the blow. So we were taking blows and throws, practicing on our own.
Yes, sir.
And there were books out. There was no VCRs. There were no videotapes.
Yes, sir.
The books out that time, I think, were Bruce Taylor. If you ever look him up, he was supposed to be the martial arts instructor of the stars.
Right.
Black belts in judo, karate, jiu-jitsu. So we would study from various books. And this is what we did until we found Moses Powell, until we went to a karate dojo, until things developed.
Right. So, well, what happened with Hudson that made him want to challenge Doc?
Like I said, he had a complex. Hudson come out the service thing. So I don't know whether the military
messed him up in the head.
I don't. Hudson was with the elite 82nd Airborne from Fort Bragg. And those dudes just like to rumble.
Yes, sir.
So he was with the 82nd Airborne. He was with the 3rd Brigade 505th Parachute Infantry. So when they had called for the 82nd Airborne to go to Vietnam, the whole division didn't go, but they called for that particular unit.
Right.
So he did go for that until he got wounded. He was supposed to have gotten wounded somewhere in the head. So I don't know if that all related to it or whatever. But Hudson, long story short, Hudson was short. And that's the only thing I can say, whatever.
Well, what happened? He challenged Doc in what?
Well, we weren't there. Doc had closed the dojo. Or we cut the class short. He said, everybody's leaving, except for Hudson. Because he and Hudson were going to get this on just among the two of them.
So he put you all out the dojo.
We were all put out. And he locked the doors, and all of us went our merry way.
Right. So and what happened when you saw Hudson and Doc? Again,
we saw them the next day. Hudson came to the dojo. He had one arm. He was all splintered up. Had a splint on, a cast, or whatever. His arm. He had been in a battle.
Yes, sir.
Put it to you that way. He had been in a battle.
What about his face?
No. I mean, Doc knew how to injure you in such a way that not much would show unless he wanted to show.
Yes, sir. Yes,
but
sir.
He worked on that arm. Whatever
Yes, sir.
he did to that arm.
Yes, sir.
And you have been there, and Seyfullah and Bill McLeod. And I know I'm missing a lot of names. Lumumba and a few other. If you have ever felt the power in Doc's hands,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't have to go any further.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got you.
I remember we went to Panama, and the crowd there spoke mostly Spanish, so they didn't understand what was going on. Doc was kind of getting a little frustrated. We were all sitting down. We were all kneeling in a kneeling position. And he was walking around and forgot who it was, and he actually just front kicked someone to the sternum, and actually he pulled it, and he actually just knocked them out for a few seconds.
Wow.
He just knocked him out for a few seconds. But he was a powerful man. I've seen Doc. I don't know if he had feeling in his feet or he had minimal feeling. I've seen Doc put out lit cigarettes and matches with his bare feet. Just rub them out. So
what?
Yeah, I've seen him do that.
Wow.
He was a phenomenal man.
Yes, sir.
Plus his background, he boxed. His hands were just unbelievable.
Yeah, he had long fingers and
Big
big knuckles.
knuckles.
Yes, sir.
His hands were unfamiliar. And when Doc told us, he had never lifted weights, but he had the body of a bodybuilder or a
Yes,
weight.
sir. Yes,
He
sir.
had never lifted weights. All just came natural to him. So we were blessed in having him for an instructor,
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
the training was hard. Even when we were on Nostrand Avenue, we didn't have any air conditioning. We had those long windows that slid open
Right.
to get some air in. But you left there, your gi was drenched.
Something wet.
Drenched.
So the Nordstrom Avenue dojo was before Atlantic Avenue.
Yeah,
Got you.
yeah.
Got you.
And like John and them were before. Some of them were 258. They started there, had been there,
Got you.
But I met Doc when he was on Nostrand Avenue.
Nordstrom Avenue. Okay.
And
Okay.
we were on the second floor.
Okay. Well, all right. So you talked to us about how his class was streetology, everything for street combat. Only a few people were allowed to go to tournaments. John, Lumumba, Sugar, and when they fought in tournaments, you all went there as backup for them in case something went wrong.
And sometimes, after
Okay.
it got known,
Right.
but that was the reason for them being there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
Okay.
the last battle, the last one that I remember, and it wasn't a battle other than two opponents in the ring, and that was Soki Little John and what was the Kung Fu practice?
Cassell.
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 Yeah, Tyree Cassell. In that battle, in the rings. It was Bill Karate versus Kung Fu.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Even though John was jiu-jitsu or whatever else.
Right.
But
Right. Exactly.
some of us, I was in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the audience just in case something broke.
Right.
And a few others.
Yes, sir.
Hodgson was down by the ring, and Kenny, and a few others.
Mm-hmm.
But that just goes to show you what tournaments were like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
so let me ask you this. So you talked to us about Doc, what kind of instructor he was, and I'm sure you got 1,000 more stories. But let's talk about some of the original Sanuces crew. I'm gonna throw a couple of names and you just tell us a story. Let's start with Grandmaster Noel Arrington. What kind of teacher was he? What kind of martial artist was he? What kind of man was he?
Noel was a good teacher. I studied under Noel, and we worked together, we traveled together. The last place we went together that I remember was Panama. That was a tour. That was Doc and our group, and also on that tour was Grandmaster Chuck Merriman from Goju, and his protege Ron Martin. Surprised I remember that name. But we went on tour to Panama, and I had always been impressed with Goju forms, the fluidity, the softness, and yet the hardness
At the
of
same time,
form.
right.
So if you ever want to see Goju forms done in a manner that you would just say, oh, you'd have to see Chuck Merriman.
So let's go back to Noel Arrington. In the dojo, what was Noel's position? What was Grandmaster Noel's personality, his teaching? How was his relationship with Doc, trust, and all that?
Noel was the second after John was doing his own thing. Noel was the second in command once Doc was not around.
Whoa.
He ran the dojo. He ran the dojo.
Wow.
And I'll never forget, Noel had everybody had their own little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Bill McLeod has his own thing, his own favorite technique or
Right.
whatever else.
Right.
Noel was known for that elbow. He had a wicked elbow
Mm-hmm.
and throws. But Noel is a personable person. I like to hear him laugh. He's a personable person, and we got along fine. That's
Mhm.
what my last trip with him was when we went to Panama. When I
Right.
went down to the dojo at night
Mm-hmm.
to train. If he was teaching, he taught. Or we would break the classes down. Say you took the yellow and green belts.
Right.
You might take the purple and brown or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in charge of everything in Doc's shop. Because after a while, when Doc's notoriety began to flourish,
Mm-hmm.
and people realized who this Moses Powell was, he was in demand.
Yes, sir.
He could be here on Monday, another city on Tuesday, somewhere on Thursday.
Right.
You know,
So Noel would run the dojo at that
Noel
time?
would run the dojo. That's if he wasn't traveling with Doc.
Well, got you. Okay, so we got Noel. Let's talk about Sugar. Robert Crossan.
Yes, yes.
He speaks highly of you. Nothing but positivity. Great. He said you were a great fighter, magnificent kicks, and powerful and big. And that's
Yeah,
another thing. He
you know-
said a big man. They never thought a big man could kick like you.
That was the very deceptive thing. This is why I think one of the reasons Doc didn't want me to fight or anything else.
In the tournaments.
Big men were not supposed to be moving like me.
Yes, sir.
I combined a lot of footwork like from Muhammad Ali.
Yes, sir.
I would dance on my toes, I would move in and out. But a big man wasn't supposed to be able to kick.
Yes, sir.
A big man was not supposed to move with the fluidity at the time that I possessed. You know, so a big man was a big man.
And is that why they gave you the nickname the Big O? Because I remember Grandmaster Sugar called you Big O, and I heard we were in Philly, and I saw Soapy Lil John. I said, you know this young man right here? And he turned around and said, Big O! So is that why they called you the Big O?
I don't know the exact same way, but my last name is Oglesby.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
rather than people try to figure out
How to
say
say
that last
Oglesby.
name,
Right.
I either was called Big O
Big
or
O.
O. That was it.
Yes, sir.
Some even call me. There used to be a television program on with David Jansen. He played the Treasury agent, and his name was Harry Oil. Some used to call me Harry O.
Gotcha.
So as long as that O was
As
there,
long as the O was there, you got it.
as long as the O was there, I answered to it.
Right. Okay, so Sugar, give us a story about Sugar real quick. Tell us something about Sugar, and then we're gonna move on to
A natural, phenomenal athlete.
Yes.
When I first met Sugar, I mean, when you hear people tell you, see Sugar walk up a wall, you know, just walk up a wall, his balance, his timing.
Right.
And when I saw Sugar throw a side kick, as a matter of fact, when you look at some of the instructors, their side kick almost looked like a spinning back kick. There was so much hit into it.
Right. Yes, sir.
That's right. And I was
That's where the
looking,
power comes from. Right.
there you go. And I said, how? And I wanted to try to get that. But these were just natural things that we could do.
Yes, sir.
He was a gymnast,
Yes.
and just natural ability. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and he was on the same tour with us when we went to Panama.
Okay.
He
Yes,
and
sir.
John,
Yes, sir.
Noel,
Right.
can't remember the rest of them.
So it's okay
Yeah,
because there's so many masters that we don't even know about.
And that's the truth.
So we talked about Noel. You're telling us about Sugar being a phenomenal athlete, gymnast. Anything else about Sugar that stands out?
Personality.
Okay.
Personality.
Got you. You know, one thing I want to say about Grandmaster Sugar, I think he's 67 right now, 68, because he was younger than you guys.
He's younger than I'm 72. Him and Kenny are about the same age.
Right.
So I'm 70. He's
We're going to talk about Kenny in a minute.
Yeah, 69 to 70 or something
But
like that.
right now, today, I talk to Grandmaster Sugar a lot. He wakes up early in the morning and he works out like he's going to the Olympics or something. Like he has this great competition coming up. And he's in so great shape. I mean, I watched him. I saw some clips of him doing some things. We were in Chicago and he's doing all this phenomenal stuff that he used to do in the 70s. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. But he thinks the world of you.
Like I said, he was a phenomenal athlete. Man.
Absolutely. Okay. All
And
right.
his personality just helped to personify what he was made of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we kind of always made each other laugh for what we were doing. And all I can say is, God help if you tried to mug that man in the street.
Right.
There would be no telling on which direction he was going to assault you from.
Yes, sir.
But I remember Sugar saying, even in an interview, when he decided to leave New York to go to Florida, somebody had approached him in the street and he saw it was going to develop into something. And the guy opened up his jacket or whatever, Sugar saw a sawed-off shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you heard that story.
Continue it.
Yeah, sawed-off shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was getting ready to reach for that. And Sugar just had to do his thing. And then he, just like John and a few others who said, you know, it's time for me to leave New York.
Right. Okay.
And they try to get me to come out there, but I like a little adversity in my weather. I don't want to be out there in all that heat.
Right.
365 days a year,
Right.
day in and day out.
Yes, sir.
Snakes, and
Alligators.
I put my little dog out there to be walked. The alligator and ate him up.
Right.
I just don't need all that.
Yes, sir.
New York and Philadelphia bad enough.
Right.
So,
Okay. So, Lil John Davis, Sanuces rules champion fighter. Let's talk. Give us a story about him in the dojo. We all know about his famous fight with Tyree Cassell. We all know about him being the king of Sunnyside Gardens. What about in the dojo? How was he in the dojo? Give us a story. Tell us your relationship with him.
John and I still keep in touch. Sophie and I still keep in touch. I always text him when he texts me for whether it's Father's Day, Christmas, or whatever else.
Yes, sir.
He was a rough instructor. Remember, he was one of most Pal's first black belts, and he took with him a lot of that. He was a rough instructor. Matter of fact, with John and Moses, I used to say to myself, when you saw Moses Powell come on the mat, if he was wearing a sweatsuit as opposed to a gi, you knew you were in for a hard workout, because he would spend half that time warming you up or conditioning you. So if he came on wearing a sweatsuit, so say to yourself, oh my gosh, here we go. As opposed to the gi. Not that it couldn't happen with the gi.
Right.
And John was a heck of an instructor. Hits like a mule. Hits like a mule.
Yes, sir.
You know. And every one of these instructors, black belts, has his or her own technique that they're known for.
Yes, sir.
Every one has the technique that they're known for.
Yes, sir.
And Sugar with the kicks, John with the punches and the kicks, Noel with the elbow, I with the kicks.
Right.
You just didn't know what they were going to come forth and do.
Yes, sir. So you with the kicks, Lil John with kicks and strikes, Noel Arrington with the elbow, the empty, and Sugar just was phenomenal with everything.
Just everything. And see what had happened when Doc found out my father was a dentist. And I think I told you that story before. So in college, you know, he was known as a slugger. He was a boxer. So he was a slugger. So I had learned to box before, so with the kicks, but I knew how to box also.
Yes, sir.
Jabs, hooks, right curls, left curls. So I knew how to box also. And what it helped was Doc had boxed,
Right.
so he incorporated boxing into his martial arts. Sugar's got boxing incorporated into
Yes,
his.
yes,
You
yes.
can't dismiss boxing
Yes,
to
sir.
some degree.
That's correct.
It's there.
Yes, sir.
It's there. I've seen Bill McLeod use a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got some technique that deals with boxing, and it's there. But like I always emphasize and tell my students, I'm teaching you how not to fight. And one of my jobs when I retired out of federal law enforcement, I was a defensive tactics instructor.
Yes, sir.
And every time within my region, Philadelphia covered it. If there was a use of force that was used by any officer, I would be contacted, or one of the other instructors would be contacted to find out if they were justified in using that force.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whether it's, the force continuum was in the dynamics of what they were supposed to do.
Right. Yes, sir.
Just like what they're going through now with this madness out here.
Right. Right.
So I had enough years doing that, and you'd be surprised, what you would have to do to bring someone down, because everyone does not, how should I put that? Everyone does not take to one blow or two blows or a strike,
Yes, sir.
and that's going to bring them down. And as a matter of fact, doctors to have the technique. Well, we did it when I was down in Arkansas at the Law Enforcement Academy. When you strike with the side of the leg with your knee, it's called a common peroneal artery, and it will cause you to Charlie horse.
Yes, sir. Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
A lay person saw you do something like that in the street, they would say, "Well, he kicked him, or
Right.
he did this."
Yes, sir.
It's not a kick. It's not even a lethal blow. But I'll give you a Charlie horse.
Yes.
I'll bring you down that
To
way.
disable you just enough time
Just
to
enough.
beat you down.
There you go.
That's nice. I
Just
like
enough.
that. I like that. I
And
like
the way
that.
to find that common pearl, if you stand upright, your middle finger will hit right on your nerve.
Gotcha.
It'll hit right on that nerve.
Now that's good teaching from one of Dr. Moses Powell's original masters who taught law enforcement on a federal level to the point where he could tell you certain pressure points, where to strike and how to strike, and how to bring a person down without going to court and getting in trouble. I like that.
That's right.
That's
I
important.
never have to go to court to defend what I have to do.
Yes, sir.
I may have had to go to court to defend on what someone else did.
Right. Gotcha.
To answer to whether it was a justifiable take.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So briefly, we talked about Tokyo John Davis, Grandmaster Sugar, Grandmaster Noel Harrington. We talked about you. We talked about Doc. Let's go two more original Sanuces crew. Senior Sensei Ken Brown, the Vijitsu master. I think he founded modern Vijitsu with Grand Professor V's blessing. What kind of friend was he? What kind of student was he? How was he on the mat? And I understand that him and Hodgson was like, they loved that street fighting stuff. Tell us about them real briefly. Just tell us about Ken Brown.
Kenny Brown, I met through Hodgson, and I'm glad he's married. He's got a wonderful wife. He's a family man. Now, so I used to tease myself, when I meet your wife, I got to buy her something, give her something for even tolerating you.
Yes, sir.
So, but Hodgson, on account of his height, would always wind up in the middle of something, on a skirmish.
Yes, sir.
Kenny just naturally looked for it, or it found him.
Yes, sir.
Either way you want to look at it.
Yes, sir.
But Mr. V, Kenny studied. He studied under Moses Powell. I think he got his knee down or something from Moses Powell. But he got his 8th down from Mr. V
Yes, sir.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the modern jiu-jitsu. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up because there are a lot of stories out here, like who formulated the modern jiu-jitsu.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kenny and Cheryl went to the same college, attended the same college,
Mm-hmm.
Hayes College. Kenny's degree was in biology.
Okay.
Kenny was the biology. Good old Cheryl, man. So proud of her. I know her father and mom are. You know, got her degree in nursing, and she's, you know, doing what she has to do.
Yes, sir.
But Kenny would fight him in it because at that particular night, Kenny and Hodgson hung out a lot.
Like I heard
Together.
the street thugs.
Yeah,
Of Sanuces.
I didn't.
Yeah. They all said you were a gentleman and you were a nice person, but you didn't want to mess with you because you were deadly. But you didn't go out in the street and start stuff. But they just
I would I did everything possible to avoid a confrontation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So tell us about Kenny.
Kenny, he was a natural fighter too.
Yes, sir.
And what helped simmer him down, I would have to say, when he met Hodgson and me, and we started training him in the various, martial arts, introducing him to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he met Mr. V, and Mr. V really took kind of a liking to him, and Mr. V spoke to him and convinced Kenny, to go back to school, get his degree,
Right.
and basically to simmer down.
Mm-hmm.
But when you, and that's what he did, that's what he did. And what we all realized, the martial arts, and I'm glad, you say the martial, I'm glad that some systems are using the term martial sciences
Yes, sir.
as opposed to the arts. Nothing wrong with the arts, but this is a science.
Yes, sir.
This is a science, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yes, sir.
This is a science, and I really like that term I use when I'm dealing with my people. So Kenny was a natural fighter, and he came to us actually early in the 70s or something. And he liked Moses, he liked Mr. V, but he undertook the training under Mr. V. Mr. V's classes.
Well, I don't want you to talk about that
Okay.
right now because we're going to end with Grand Professor V. I know you got a lot of stories on that. But just give us something about Kenny. He loved the streets. He was wild, fighting all the time. And he was in there with Hodgson, so I know what kind of lifestyle it was. But Grand Professor V kind of took a liking to him and calmed him down a little bit.
Yeah, you had to find that button that would mellow a person out.
Yes, sir.
You know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, tell us about the modern Jiu-Jitsu then, real briefly, because I Senior Sensei Kim Brown is one of my mentors. He shares a lot of Jiu-Jitsu knowledge with me and just humbles me when I talk to him.
Shared a lot with me. The modern Jiu-Jitsu, when he opened it up at the college, teaching that, and
CW Post.
CW Post College, and
Yes, sir.
he began to see the transition. He was good at it. He was knowledgeable at it, and he respected Mr. V.
Right.
Professor V. He
Yes,
respected him. He respected Moses Powell. So slowly but surely, you saw the transition.
Right. I had asked him. I said, explain to me what the difference between Jiu-Jitsu and Sanuces. And he said something that blew my mind. He said that Jiu-Jitsu was a structure. It was like the ABCs. You had to learn your ABCs and you had to learn the structure of letters. But Sanuces was taking the alphabet, the ABCs, and creating words. That's the difference between Sanuces and Jiu-Jitsu. Where Sanuces, you could be more creative, but you had to have that foundation and that structure of the alphabet, which was Jiu-Jitsu. And I thought that was very powerful.
Well put, wasn't it?
Well put. So I have an article here that was given to me. Just show it real quick. And I don't have my glasses, so I'm not going to try to read it, but I'm going to mention. It talks about Moses Powell being 5'9.5", 210 pounds, whatever. Some people say 320, but he was a small man at one time, and then he became a gigantic man. And he said that he was an immovable object, but there was one man, a small, wiry type of man that could throw him, flip him, lock him, strike him, and that was Grand Professor V.
Mm-hmm.
So, you guys from the original Sanuces crew all had access to Grand Professor V and took his classes. So tell us where his classes were, when they were, how they were, who was in the class, and was it just a handful of you, or was it a large crowd, and what kind of person was Grand Professor V? And then we'll talk about Moses and V together.
Grandmaster or Professor V, as he was commonly known, a phenomenal man, a true professor. We had, well, most of not all of black belts on Moses Powell, we were required to study under him.
Yes, sir.
You didn't have to go for your black belt, but you had to study it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But Mr. V taught at 554 Atlantic Avenue. His school was across the street from Moses' school.
Yes, sir.
He taught there on Friday nights. And the class was open to all black belts. All black belts from any denomination,
Yes, sir.
any system, any style, short, tall, skinny. You were welcome there.
Right, right.
On the mat.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about a workout. The mat was packed. And when you were thrown on a mat with your Uki and Tori, when you were thrown, you had to get up quick because there was another body coming down in that spot.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
you
sir.
would collide.
Yes, sir.
And at the end of the class, on the desk, on the table, wherever, there was a hat or whatever. And in that hat, you threw in, whether you had $2, $3, $4, you threw in that payment that night for Mr. V.
Yes, sir. Got you. Got you. Wow.
And this was on Friday nights. That was a black belt. That was your black belt class.
Right.
And Mr. V was like studying. It was like studying for your college boards. You had notebooks, textbooks. He had to familiarize you with laws.
Yes, sir.
You know, you just didn't go out here and maim somebody,
Right.
and think you were going to walk away.
Right.
Though it was a lot easier back then than it is now.
Yes, sir.
You had to show what is known as justification use of force.
Right, right, right.
You know, and once your assailant was rendered helpless, or there was no more fight left into him, you didn't continue beating him or assaulting him when the fight stopped.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yes, sir.
There is no more. It stopped. But Mr. V, being the petite man that he was,
Mm-hmm.
he hit hard.
Yes, sir.
He had little corn calluses on his knuckles, and he hit hard. Doc, most about very protective of him.
Yes, sir.
Very protective.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And let it be known to us, you know, we ever saw anything that took place with Mr. V, if somebody was foolish enough to bother him, you know, we better make sure that it went no further.
Yes, sir. So, Doc, Moses Powell told you all, if anything happened to Professor V while you were around, you better make sure it's corrected and fixed. Because
Taken
you would
care
have
of.
to see him.
Yeah, they're taken care of.
Yes, sir. Got you.
Very protective of
Yes, sir.
Professor V.
Got you. Okay. Well, let me ask you this. You have V-Jitsu-Ru, V-Jitsu-Te, V-Jitsu-65, V-Jitsu-75, Modern V-Jitsu. You have V-Honest Jiu-Jitsu. That's a lot of stuff. Explain about Professor V's system.
Every 10 years, Professor V updated his system.
I like the way you said that. He updated, not changed, but updated.
Changed.
Yes, sir.
Updated. He realized the fighting systems had, the styles had changed. It was updated.
Yes, sir.
When we started back then, we studied Jiu-Jitsu Teddy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And every 10 years or so, he would have to upgrade it.
Yes, sir.
Update it.
Yes, sir.
To meet the needs of the street of today.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
As simple as I can put it.
Yes, sir.
He saw the needs of that.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, when Mr. V started introducing us to weapon techniques, you had stick versus stick versus knife, or knife versus knife.
Yes, sir.
Well, when you did knife versus knife when we worked in the dojo, you were dealing with rubber knife at the time.
Yes, sir.
So when you would cut or slashes would go out, you just get slashed with a rubber knife.
Yes, sir.
But when you were doing stick with stick, you were getting hit with a real stick. A lot of us left there with swollen hands, arms.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You were dealing with stick.
Good. Very good. I like that. Yes, sir. Beautiful. 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 Okay, so you talked about Doc's relationship with Professor V. He was very protective. What was it like being around Moses Powell, the man? Did you just have a teacher-student relationship with him, or did you hang out with him like I hang out with you in your house? Did you know his family? Give us a little touch on that.
Well, Little John, Hodgson, myself, who else is there? Willie. We had the type of relationship. It was like in the Japanese Ukidashi, where the students stayed at the master's house.
Right.
They actually lived there. So after the dojo training, and the Saturday night, we would leave the dojo. This is from a Nostrand Avenue. We would leave the dojo, and we would get on the A train.
The famous A train.
Old A train, get off
Yes,
of Linden. Yeah, Linden Boulevard. I'm surprised I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc lived in the pink houses, apartment houses.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife Betty and Tina and Cheryl. Right across from there was Sunnydale Farms. You got your drinks and everything. And we would go get the drinks because we knew Betty had dinner ready for us. Boy, Betty, let me tell you, she could fry some chicken and some potato salad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's where we spent the weekend, over there.
Before you go on, you mentioned Sister Betty. I met her. Beautiful, beautiful Muslim woman, respectful, knowledgeable, and a great storyteller. She used to tell us stories about Doc when he first started coming up in the arts and doing push-ups upside down on the wall and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, Cheryl, that's our sister. We
Yes,
love her.
indeed.
Tina. And so what was your relationship with them? I remember years ago, man, maybe 20 years ago, you and I were talking, and you told me, man, I used to babysit those kids. Tell me about that.
There times when Doc and Betty, they were going out, evening on the town to the movies or whatever. They used to babysit the kids. The kids were no problem babysitting.
Right.
They sat on the floor, we had the TV on, had their coloring books and drawing, and they went about there. They were like little grown women anyway. So, they would do that, and I sat and Doc had a reclining type, a recliner.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit in the chair and fall asleep. But also at that time, that's when I drank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was never drunk, but Doc had he had sake there.
Gotcha.
Never had sake. So I wouldn't had some sake. Next thing I knew, Doc and Betty they had come home and I was in the chair knocked out like a light. The girls were still up drawing on the floor and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Doc, shaking me. I thought I told you were supposed to be watching the girls. I said, I am watching.
You either drink your sake and fell asleep.
I drank a little of that sake. I said, oh my goodness.
Okay.
But the girls were no problem. They were, when they got ready to go to sleep, they went in their rooms and went to sleep. I stayed in the other room until Mo and Betty got home.
Mm-hmm.
Then went right back to sleep. But most of the time on the weekends, that's where we spent our time. Me, Hodgson, Little John.
At Doc's house.
At Doc's house.
Beautiful.
We would go on.
Beautiful.
Betty would have dinner ready.
Yes, sir.
We'd buy the drinks.
Right.
And it was just a family affair. You know?
Yes, sir. Great. Great.
And we used to call Doc at that time. We either called him Musa or Mo.
Yeah, I heard you call him Mo,
Mm-hmm.
and I laugh at that because when people call him Mo, that means they go way back and they had a real personal relationship.
Yeah, we call him Mo, and, but he was a heck of an instructor, man. Let me tell you, he brought that self-defense to the ultimate level.
So did you, back then when the original Sanuces crew, before Sanuces were there with him, and you guys were just doing everything, did you have an idea that back in the 60s and the early 70s, that what you all were doing was opening up a door to a whole system that was going to be loved and admired by so many people around the world?
Not really. Like I said, we had no patches. We had no certificates, promotion certificates. It was just us and the belt that we wore around our waist. And Doc traveled to different places teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I started to realize what was happening, I was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And when I could find a Black Belt magazine or Inside Kung Fu or Karate Illustrated magazine
Yes, sir.
that had an article on Doc, I definitely bought it. And I'm saying to myself, wow, he's finally making it.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
making it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I started to realize it. And when I got out of the service, at that time we had moved from Nostrand Avenue. We were at 1 West 125th Street. And I would go there and work out again.
Mm-hmm.
And start working out until I was discharged from the service.
Mm-hmm.
And but I remember telling Doc, I said, I'm reading a lot about you, in the martial art magazine. And you could see the gleam in his eye too, because he worked.
Yes, sir.
He had to prove himself. There would be people that would come down there and challenge him.
Mm.
Seen that. I've seen that,
How'd that go for them?
Not well for them. Because, like when in a dojo or whatever system you're studying, when they teach you, when a man's coming at you, foot sweep, punch, kick, you can't foot sweep nothing as big as Moses Bell.
Right. Yes, sir.
You can't foot sweep something that big.
Right.
But he would defend what he believed in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And just like we had discussed briefly here, his hands were phenomenal. The guy, when I was in federal law enforcement, my instructor there, as a matter of fact, Doc gave him his 5th Dan. He asked me, you think he's worth it? I said, yeah, I trained him.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me the paperwork, shipped it off, and made Tom Kellogg a Godon in Southern Kashru.
Oh, nice.
And Tom was so appreciative of that, he made a Godon of him in Southern Kashru. Matter in fact, they mailed it to him, yeah. So,
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask you this, because I don't want to go too long because I know we probably could be here till next week talking about this.
Each instructor you speak to, you can get variations of
Yes,
stories,
sir. Yes, sir.
depending on the time frame that
Right,
they work with.
right. So let's end this by talking about you were on Dr. Moses Powell's demo team, and you were part of the Madison Square Garden demo team. Tell us how it was to do that demo in front of thousands of people with Moses Powell, Soapy Little John, Sugar, Noel Arrington, and all the greats from the original crew.
Well, let me just say the names that you just mentioned, all of us may not have appeared on that first card at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Doc made a couple of free appearances at the garden, and different ones at different times.
Yes, sir.
The one you're talking about, we were the first group. I know Noel Arrington was there, Doc, and I really can't remember the rest of the name. It was like, we had the team then.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who are wrestling fans from WWE,
Mm-hmm.
when you see them
Well, it
come
was
out,
WWF at one time.
WWF, yeah.
Yes, sir.
When they came out under that curtain
Mm-hmm.
and walked towards the ring,
Right.
I will forever remember that because we came out from under that same curtain,
Yes, sir.
walking towards the ring. There was a hush of the crowd because we were not wearing gis. We were wearing the outfits that Doc had designed.
Yes, sir. The jiu-jitsu uniform.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Doc was all in white, and I think we had the red tops and the black bottoms,
Mm-hmm.
like the Hakama bottoms.
Yes, sir.
And people, I guess when they heard jiu-jitsu, they were expecting us to have jiu-jitsu gis on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We walked from under that curtain down the aisle, up the steps to the ring, entered the ring, and when we entered the ring, we started doing the rollouts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And people were amazed, especially when they saw Doc doing his rollout. It was a silent rollout. You didn't
Yes,
hear
sir.
anything.
Right. Right.
And we would do the rollouts. And then we would sit down and Doc would do his thing. Once we would attack him, he would do his thing.
Yes, sir.
And we just performed.
Mm-hmm.
Sanuces was coming into light then.
Beautiful.
It was coming into light.
Yes, sir.
After the demonstration, I can't remember if you had like a 6-minute, 10-minute slot
Mm-hmm.
that each instructor had.
Right.
And once we finished, we all stood up. Doc had us stand up. And we stood up at attention, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
hachirach, whatever. And we bowed to the audience. And all you could see was the flash from the cameras.
Yes, sir.
That's all you could see, flash from the cameras. And you look around, you saw the standing ovation.
Standing ovation. Yes, sir.
Standing ovation.
Yes, sir.
Hand clapping. And out of Doc's the side of his mouth, I was Doc, Noel, me. And Doc asked, Noel whispered out of his mouth, how did we do? And Noel Arrington kind of looked at Doc, then looked at me and said, oh, did you hear what Doc said? I said, what? He said, he wanted to know how we did. And I looked at Noel, I said, can he not hear the crowd? Can he not hear the ovation? See these cameras snapping?
Right. Yes, sir.
And then Doc led us out the ring, down those stairs, and we walked back to the room.
Wow.
I think Clarence Risbrook. Clarence was the one black belt that we had. He made the uniforms. He was a tailor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he was one of the owners of Vinbrooks, which was a men's shop.
Yes, sir.
And Taylor, once Doc designed the outfits, he made them.
Yes, sir.
And he was there, and so in the next year, I think it was John and Hodgson.
Right.
Depending on the availability of the people to be
Right.
off that
Understood.
day to do it.
Yes, sir. Wow.
But we did the first show
Yes, sir.
at
Beautiful.
Madison Square Garden, and that will that will forever be with me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, this was a great interview. You shine a lot of light on things that people probably didn't know, wanted to know. I love the story about Madison Square Garden and how you all walked out. I love the streetology. I love the stories about the original masters. So, for the audience, we're gonna strive to do more of this, to give you masters who can share history with you, can share experiences with you, with Dr. Moses Powell and Grand Professor V. Because at the end of the day, these type of stories are things that you all and I didn't experience. However, we're with those who were there with Moses in the 60s and the 70s, and they opened the door for all of us. So we want to pay honor and respect to them. So I'm going to be talking to Grandmaster Ken Brown from Modern Jiu-Jitsu, also the original Sanuces crew. We've talked to Veronica Walker, Grandmaster Veronica. We've talked to Grandmaster Urban Muhammad, Brother Ted. We've talked to Jiu-Jitsu Master, Honest Jiu-Jitsu Master, Professor Scott Stewart. I got a 3-hour interview with the inheritor of Honest Jiu-Jitsu, Grandmaster David James. I can't wait for you to hear that because the information that he put out is phenomenal. So we're trying to give you information that will enhance your study, your experience in Sanuces and Jiu-Jitsu, because we are the family of Jiu-Jitsu and we want to stay strong. So Grandmaster,
I just want to say one thing. I'm glad you mentioned her name. Grandmaster Veronica. I remember when she first came into the system.
yes sir.
That young lady would not quit.
Yes, she's tough.
She's tough. She would not quit.
Yes sir.
And God bless you, young lady. She
Yes.
would not quit.
She's still hanging in there.
Yeah, she's still. I know. I keep up with her. I look through the YouTube and see her on there and everything
Facebook,
else.
yeah.
But she's stuck with. She's been thrown by all of us or whatever else.
Right.
She just would not stop. And
Awesome.
awesome young lady.
Awesome. Very good.
A great young lady.
So before we end, speak on, in your mind, what a grandmaster is, what a master is, and what advice do you give to the up-and-coming masters and the instructors out there and the martial artists out there? What advice would you like to share with them to help them along the way?
Oh, what a grandmaster is. What a master is. One thing you should always remember is to maintain that level-headedness and get rid of your ego. That's the main thing. Shed that ego. You don't have to get out to prove anything to anyone that you're a grandmaster or a master or whatever. Shed that ego. And basically just be kind to one another. Keep your spirit strong. And like I said, when I started, the one thing I never wanted to do was, I didn't like, and I still don't, I didn't like having pictures taken of myself. At that time, the Safe Law has no choice in it now. Grandmaster Safe Law did not like to have pictures taken of himself.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Now he can't stay out in the camera.
Now he can't stay out from under the camera. So the advice I give to you, be willing, just like what Moses Powell did with us. We talk about the events that we have taken. Moses Powell did not charge us any tuition for studying under him. I'm not saying you can do the same thing, but we had to keep our boundaries straight.
Yes.
We had to hopefully show the same attitude He demonstrated to us, to others, you know.
Yes, sir.
Help those in need if we can.
Yes, sir.
So, just just be aware of that.
Yes, sir.
And after a while, a lot of us, we didn't wear the belts. The belt is just a belt. If you're a master, grand master, God knows by the time this is done, what of the titles they'll come up with. But I give my thanks to all of the instructors, all of the people that I have met. Whether you're a white belt, yellow belt, green belt, whatever, I give my thanks to you.
Yes, sir.
And like I tell them, I used to tell someone then, I can learn from you just as you learning from me.
Yes, yes. Yes, sir.
I can learn from you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So just be blessed, man. This past year has been a rough year for all of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But hold your head high. Hold your head high.
Hold your head high.
Going to get better.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Oh, when we talk on the phone, and when I talk to Grandmaster Ken Brown, and all the masters, especially the original, and Doc used to say it, watch your back, watch your back, watch your back. Instead of saying bye or talk to you later, watch your back. You always say, watch your back. Ken Brown always said, watch your back. Explain watch your back, and briefly, so we can end it out with a lesson.
Watch Your Back came out, I don't even know how long that it came about. But, people actually think after you work out in the dojo and you get out in the street, some people go and have a couple of drinks or whatever else. That is all over. You should always be aware. You should always be aware of your sound, your surroundings.
Yes, sir.
And just don't take things for granted.
Right.
When I was an instructor, when I was in federal law enforcement, we always taught the officers you should always be it was color coded. You should always be in a color code of yellow.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when that light flashes when you're driving, yellow means caution.
Caution, yes, sir. Teach.
Cautious of where you are. Cautious of your surroundings.
Yes, sir.
But watch your back is just simply that. Tell you the truth, a friend could do you more harm than an enemy. Enemy you're not going to let get so close to.
Yes, sir. Teach.
That friend. No, it's my sister. But a friend, you got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful. And that's what Doc used to say when you and I discussed it earlier.
So you saying watch your back means you know what your enemy is going to do, so you keep them at a distance, but it's your friend you need to watch sometimes, because your friend can become your enemy.
And just in general, out in the streets, when you're walking, be of your surroundings.
Yes, sir.
Be aware.
Yes, sir.
Just because you left the dojo doesn't mean on your way home something's not going to break.
Right.
Something's going to happen.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
You watch your back.
Yes,
Even if you're attacked in the street, one person attacks you, that doesn't mean he's the only one that's there.
Yes, sir. That's
His
right.
friend could be across the street.
That's right. That's right.
Or
That's
one
right.
could be in the car. Watch your back.
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask you this. If one of the original Sanuces crew got into a fight in the street and it didn't go too well for them, what would happen when he came back to the dojo and the other crew found out that he didn't represent?
Well, let's see. Depending on the circumstances, how far it went, we like to find out where it went wrong.
Yes, sir.
Now, Hodgson and I knew one guy's name was, I'm not going to say his last name. His name was Emerson. And he got into a fight, wherever he was. And he had studied in New York at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. It's called
Bam.
Judo Incorporated.
Okay.
And what had happened, what he did, I don't know, because look at the television or whatever happened. He threw the guy was coming at him. He threw the guy in Tomanati, stomach through.
Yes, sir.
Got that off. But when you throw somebody in Tominaga and you take one of those sacrifice throws, make sure he's disabled enough not to be able to respond, or make sure there's no one else there with a bat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that when you're getting up off the ground, you run into nothing but wood.
Yes, sir.
From that bat.
Yes, sir.
We saw him, his face was out to that side.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, so, it depends. And I would dare to say, most people may not come to the dojo for a few days or whatever. May not want to talk about it.
Right.
To let it be known.
Yes, sir.
So each person is different.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hopefully you can avoid that confrontation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now the streets are so bad, who knows?
Right, exactly. Well, Grandmaster Harold Oglesby, the Big O, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for always being there for me and being there for the students here in the Philadelphia, Delaware area. We want to thank you for your sacrifice. We want to thank you for your dedication to Dr. Moses Powell and Grand Professor V. You have always been there to help us out. And for all of you in the listening audience, this is one of the masters that you didn't know. You didn't know he existed. You didn't know his name because he wasn't famous like Grandmaster Sugar and Grandmaster Little John, and he's not known like the name Lumumba, but he was there with that original crew, and he helped open the door. And I know personally that Doc loved him and honored and respected him because I met him when Doc was still here.
Yeah.
And this gentleman here is a jewel, and there are a few left. They're not all still around, but he is one of the few Jews, and he's willing to share the knowledge. And we're going to try to get more masters from the original crew to speak with you. Some of them sort of, they don't want to really talk too much because that's just the way they are. Some of them said that they would allow me to interview, and then I haven't heard from them, and that's fine. But we got a Jew here today, and we thank God for him. So thank you again, Grandmaster Oglesby.
And like I
said,
everything. I'm the silent warrior.
And he's the silent warrior.
Like
Us.
Like that.
Us. Watch your back.
Watch your back.